Plan resource management is the process of identifying how to estimate, acquire, manage, and use both human and physical resources. The outputs from this process include the resource management plan and our team charter. Within this process, we'll be using data representation. We could use hierarchical type charts to help organize the resources that we need for project work to be completed. We've seen some of these charts previously, such as the work breakdown structure, the organizational breakdown structure, and the risk breakdown structure. We could also use a responsibility assignment matrix, and we're going to see an example of this on the following slide. This shows a relationship between specific work packages or activities that need to be completed and the team members that will be involved with them. Their level of involvement will be reflected using RACI, which denotes who is responsible for doing the work, who will be held accountable for the work being done, who should be consulted about it, and who will be informed about it. We could also use a simple text-based format, so perhaps nothing but a basic document that states by department, by manager, and then by function who is assigned to what area. Later, we'll discuss organizational theory, which includes some means of how people, teams, and organizational units behave and act together. This is an example of a responsibility assignment matrix. Here we see 4 activities and 5 personnel assigned. We do have a very important note at the top of the slide. Only one person should be accountable for any given activity. When we talk about somebody being responsible for doing work, that means that they will actually be acting as a practitioner. They will be doing the activity. The person accountable is ultimately who will answer for whether or not the activity was done and how well it was done. Now, just because they're accountable does not necessarily mean that they have to do the work. If we look at the develop activity, for example, we see that Maud is accountable for the work being done, but Donnie is responsible for actually doing it. Consulted and informed are two different things that sound very similar. Consulted requires feedback. So, for example, with the define activity, we need to talk to Donnie and receive his feedback about the definition that we come up with. With informed, this is more so just giving them a heads up as to where we're at. Outputs from this process include the resource management plan. This is going to include the identification of resources, the specific roles and responsibilities of the resources that we are going to be bringing on board. With a role, according to the PMBOK, this is the portion of the project for which one is responsible. And again, responsible being doing the work and performing the activity. With authority, this is the right to make decisions and sign approvals. Levels of authority can vary greatly, so we just want to go ahead and define it very clearly. Responsibility, that's a specific work performed to complete the project. And with competency, skills, so think about your skill sets and also your skill levels and capacity to actually complete the project. Resource acquisition is something that we have to start thinking about pretty early on. How are we going to acquire these resources? Is it going to be entirely an internal acquisition, pulling them from other areas within the organization? Or can we go ahead and hire people on, either in a permanent or temporary capacity? Or perhaps we have some type of partnering arrangement with a competitor, so that way we can go ahead and leverage their human capital. With training, we have to ensure that all team members are trained properly, so that way they know how to do their job the right way the first time. If we do not train the team members, we will be sacrificing quality in the long run. A recognition plan is very important to define at the front end of the project. One of the worst things that we can do is wait until the end of the project when all of the results are in and then decide how we are going to reward people. If we're going to have some type of recognition program, then we need to go ahead and lay out that criteria at the front end so that way people can see exactly what they have to do. This level of transparency becomes very important and can prevent a lot of resentment down the road. The project team resource management, this will tell us how we will define, staff, manage, and eventually release team members. Obviously, staffing and releasing is not going to occur all at once. If we have a multi-year project, we will not hire everybody on day one, and we will not let everybody go on the last day. People will be brought on board and let go depending on what type of value they add to the project. Basically, if they're not gainfully employed, then we don't really want them to be there. We want them to be doing something productive and working towards our deliverable. The project organization charts we were discussing previously, this could take the form of a tree diagram, that graphical hierarchical depiction. With team development, how are we going to get this team to perform at top notch? How can we improve their dynamics and their effectiveness and overall efficiency? The team charter is another very important output from this process. This documents the team's values, agreements, and operational guidelines. Some of the things that the team charter may include are how often are we going to meet and communicate, and what mediums of communication will we use? What is the decision-making process? Now, there's many different ways. Perhaps we decide to put everything to a vote, and we have discussed some of these methods. Perhaps it is an autocratic method, or we're looking for a majority rules or a simple plurality. With conflict resolution, conflict is inevitable anytime we have more than one person involved in work. When we do have conflict, how do we keep it from becoming contentious, and how are we going to resolve it in a timely manner? With our project documents updates, what types of assumptions are we making as we move forward with our resource management plan? Are we assuming that a certain amount of personnel will be available at the skill set and skill level that we want? Are we assuming that the level of compensation that we offer will be sufficient to entice people to work for us? And if we identify any uncertainty, then we definitely want to record it within the risk register. We've just finished discussing planned resource management, a learning assessment. What is the purpose of this process in your own words? We're trying to develop a roadmap for building the project team, including what roles and responsibilities will be filled, and what skill sets are needed, and who they're going to report to. What types of experts should be utilized here? Human resource experts, anybody that has any experience dealing with compliance issues, hiring, or firing of personnel. What types of enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets should be considered here? EEFs could include the organization structure or culture, any existing human resource guidelines that we have, physical location of potential team members. For OPAs, the policies that we can adopt from the corporate knowledge base, any forms or templates that we have, perhaps lessons learned from recent and relevant experience. The escalation procedures for handling issues amongst team members should be incorporated as well. Why would you use a responsibility assignment matrix? A RAM is used to show the interaction between work packages and activities and specific personnel. What does a team charter contain? The team charter documents the team's values, agreements, and operational guidelines. It can also include meeting and communication guidelines, decision-making process, and conflict resolution techniques. What is the purpose of the resource management plan? Resource management plan documents how project resources should be categorized, allocated, managed, and released. Who should develop the team charter? The team charter works best when the team develops it, or at least has an opportunity to contribute to it. As a project manager, you should at least facilitate this conversation.